Thank you for participating in the South Carolina Shares Community-Based Awareness and Support video series. SC Shares the provider of co-occurring peer support training in South Carolina. Through this important work, we realize that not everyone serving in a peer support capacity can attend a week-long session to gain these skills. This project, of which you are an integral part of, aims to extend the reach and impact of our peer support network. The training designed for your convenience will be delivered through 7 modules that can be viewed remotely and asynchronously by individuals or groups of individuals in peer support roles. The tools users will gain can be translated into peer support in a variety of settings, everything from healthcare access to employment support, family intervention, and substance use treatment. On behalf of SC Share, thank you for joining us in working toward our vision of a society where wellness is understood, promoted, and embraced. A special thank you to the Spartanburg County Behavioral Health Task Force for supporting this work, and to the Appalachian Regional Commission for their generous funding and unwavering support in this important effort.
My why for doing what I do and why I got into this work, I want to look back and feel like I contributed to something that mattered. I want to know that I did what I could to be an example, to help inspire and lift others, and see what kind of change I could bring. It's about creating connections with others and being excited about learning from different people and different experiences. There's so much to learn and celebrate, and that we could grow and gain from just getting to know one another. Be excited and be encouraged and motivated to connect with one another and learn from each other. Because of that, we will grow and we'll create stronger communities and societies and a more promising, gentler, kinder, more beautiful future. Hi, my name is Mike Young. I'm really happy to be here to be able to discuss this topic of multiculturalism and the way that we have different identities and the way that we can connect with one another and make meaningful connections, and how that applies to mental health awareness, access, and how we can work together to build stronger communities. So a little bit about myself. I got into this work through anthropology. I'm a cultural anthropologist. I've spent about a year living in the jungles of Guatemala with indigenous communities of Ekchi Maya. You can see a picture of me here taking notes outside of a family's house. I made really strong connections with them over the years, and I even helped name a child in the village, that picture of the family where the boy's holding a little girl. I gave her her name. Her name is Bella Orquídea, which means beautiful orchid. And that's a typical house that they live in with a thatched roof and mud floors and wood walls. So this really plays into this conversation that I've had of what I do for work is being let into communities, being trusted. How do you build those relationships? And how do you be let in? And that totally plays into how I got into this line of work. So as I was completing my PhD at USC, I came across the program PASOS, which is a community health worker focused organization that supports the Latino community here in South Carolina. And I saw that they were doing the work. I saw that they were connecting people with the community and organizations and seeing their ability to increase the access for that community itself. With cultural humility, it just made sense. I saw myself as I can utilize what I've learned and what I know to make an impact in this work. So as an anthropologist, talking about culture, it just made sense. And I've been giving presentations about the Latino culture and community as a whole, but being in the background of anthropology, talking about all the different varieties of who we are as people has just made a lot of sense for the kind of work that I do. And a big part of that is really connecting with people as people, seeing them as humans, going through human experiences, and connecting them with on that personal human level. So what I like to do is I like to share a little bit about my personal life, so you get a picture of who I am. So in that picture in the bottom right is me and my daughter Alice at the zoo. She's now 9, and there's my son Max on the far left, a little rock star waiting to happen. And he's awesome. He's 7 now, and he's taking after me because I I incorporate all of this advocacy and being vocal and standing up and being visible into everything I do in my work, in my personal life, in my academia, and everything, all my passions. That's a picture of me with my band, The Haves. And we've performed on the State House steps in South Carolina, on the Capitol, and we've done things around DACA awareness, voter awareness, and just utilizing our platforms to make a difference and send a message and show that we can make a difference. It has been just a big part of my parenting, my professional life, my personal life, and my hobbies. So I hope to incorporate a little bit of that style and flair into this presentation itself, and here we go. So getting to know people is really about storytelling and hearing and feeling their lived experiences. And there's many ways to do that. And one of the ways is poetry. And what I want to share with you right now is a poem. The poem is actually the lyrics to one of the songs of my band. It's called Chase the Sun. And it starts out in Ekchi Maya. Barshigaye. Behek. Mama, I'm leaving now. The train is calling me. I'm following my dreams of a better life for all of us. I promise I'll send money every third Tuesday. On the dot, they pay by the hour there. Don't worry, Mama, I'll come back for you. While I'm gone, when you look up at the night sky and see those stars, know that I'm thinking of you. But for now, I'm off to chase the sun. To the horizon. I'm so close I can taste it. My knuckles dig into the dirt underneath me. Dragged by my ankles, thrown into a van, I sleep on concrete. Spend weeks in a motel manager's back room. People watch me. People judge me. They make promises to help me. I cross the line. They cross the line. Into the desert, I find my way, carrying gallons of water on my back. Through barren wasteland, mouth parched by heat, I'm being chased by the sun. To the horizon, bending me, breaking me, testing all that I believe. Pray for rain. Now I only get to watch the sunset. Behind tall buildings, behind tall buildings. I don't believe the lies that I was told when I was young. This isn't paradise, land of sacrifice. I want to take it back. I can't remember the last time I looked into my mother's eyes or held my brother's hand. I traded my childhood and innocence for a clock that never stops, never gets tired. But I do. At night, I'm afraid of what might happen to me. I hardly ever see the sun these days. To the horizon, we chase the sun, and I claw. Now that poem was loosely based on the immigration story of Bella Rosa Guardado, pictured here at the border between Tijuana, Mexico, and the California border, 40 years after she crossed. In the 1970s, growing up in El Salvador, she grew up much like the family that you saw in that picture in Guatemala. Mud house, no running water, no electricity until she was a teenager. And she dreamt of more. She felt like she could be more. And at the time, civil war was starting to become precarious. Life in El Salvador was becoming dangerous. And she was living in poverty, and she just felt like, I can have more. There is more to this. She'd heard of the land of milk and honey, right? El Norte, the United States. So she decided at the age of 17, her uncle and her brother were gonna make that trip. They didn't know anybody. She only had a 6th grade education, no English, and they took on that trip. Along the way, they met coyotes, who are the people that take you from place to place. You pay them to go to the next place. And they gave them different advice. Advice on, if you get caught, bury your papers. Say that you're from this country that you're in, otherwise they'll send you back to the original one. Don't say that you're together, because they'll send you all back together. So they got all the way to that border where you see her standing, and they tried to get across. They got caught. The uncle and the brother were not as convincing as she was. They got sent back. So here she is, 17, at the border in the 1970s, alone, doesn't know anybody, 6th grade education, no English. Spent 2 weeks there, making friends with anybody that she could. A family traveling through that lived in the United States came across her, and they saw the strength in her struggle. And they said, if you get across, here's our number, give us a call, and we will make good on that, and we'll take you in and get you started. That's all she had, right? It's the only piece of hope that she had, this little piece of paper with these strangers' numbers on it. Well, 2 weeks goes by, she's trying to get across. On one day, it was her 5th attempt on that day, she gets across, and she calls that number. And they make good on that promise. They take her in, and they look at newspapers, and they look up a job for her. It's a live-in housekeeper with a family. It's a husband and wife and 2 young sons. So she starts doing that, working for them, and it goes on for about a year. And the relationship between the husband and wife was already on the rocks, so they ended up splitting up. But he saw a lot of potential in her, and he saw that connecting her with the things that she wanted made her happy, and he enjoyed spending time with her, and they started to get to know each other. And if you've ever seen the movie Spanglish, they've started to fall in love. So this is them during that time. So she developed her English through his support. She got apprentice jobs. She worked in a factory. She became a lead, got into leadership. She eventually became a computer components engineer and helped be part of the prototype team that developed the pulse oximeter that we use to measure our vitals on our fingers. She retired with a 6-figure income and the sole provider for the household. And there they are a little bit later, a lot later. And it really speaks to the story of seeing somebody's strengths, seeing somebody's lived reality, and knowing where attention can be placed, and with that, unlocking the potential of somebody through a little bit of guidance, a little bit of hope, a little bit of support. And I know this story really well because Bella Rosa Guardado is my mom, and these are my parents. So this is my story. And I do what I do because I see the potential in lifting others. It's why I do what I do. I know that with a little bit of support and a little bit of example setting and nurturing, people can realize their full potentials. And also, I grew up with this half identity, being half El Salvadoran and half this white guy named Fred, right? So being that dual identity, I realized I saw different treatment of different communities, different people. And that made me wonder why. What is it that makes the world tick, and these power dimensions that structure the way that we see each other and treat each other? So a lot of that's going to be played into the topics of what we're going to be talking about today. So like the various identities, who we are as people, what makes us up, and how that plays into the way that we interact with each other. And then of course, how that plays into mental health and the impacts that all of these pressures play on our ability to feel comfortable, feel welcome, feel safe, and what we can do to increase that for others. I have a little joke about my identity where I do say that I am half El Salvadorian and half Fred. I say that I'm café con leche, right? So I like that blend, a latte. So here's an overview of what is going to be talked about. Breaking down culture. What is it, right? Do we have culture? Who does? Who doesn't? What is culture? What does it look like? Can we be part of many cultures all at the same time? But also understanding that when we interact with each other, there can be misunderstandings. And the way that those misunderstandings play out can be impactful. And there's a term called microaggression, which has an element of discomfort that comes from interactions with people who might be different from us based on that misunderstanding. And we're going to navigate that. We're going to look at it and try to avoid it, but we have to identify it first and, reflect on our own biases. We have them, and that's totally okay. It's just about being comfortable in that space of not knowing. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. That plays into what implicit bias is. Implicit bias is our preference, our familiarity of what makes us comfortable around who, right? We tend to go and hang out with people like us, and that's totally normal. It's just comfortable, right? But what that leads to is gaps in understanding and knowledge of other people's realities and other people's experiences. So how do we get to know and bridge those gaps? How do we connect with people who are different from us? And this hopefully will cultivate a sort of sense of work culture that can be developed from these strategies, these tips on how to connect with one another and celebrate that diversity, that difference, that similarities, the way to connect with each other. How do we do that? And what does that look like afterwards? And in a professional setting, with our clientele, with community members, how do we celebrate how do we be sensitive and celebrate diversity, inclusion, and take it to the next level where we're making meaningful connections and relationships? So one of the biggest first steps is becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sometimes we enter into spaces where we're just unfamiliar. We don't know how to act, right? We're a fish out of water. Well, the thing I like to tell people in all of my trainings that I say is, don't be scared to make a mistake. Mistakes is where the learning happens. It's where true, genuine understanding and connections can form. I like to also mention that we that are in this work, we do this because we're drawn to it. We're called to it. We want to see people do well. We want to connect with others. So we have that kind of compassionate, altruistic sense of wanting to see people in their best light. But sometimes that makes us scared and paralyzes us into thinking that, oh, I don't want to say anything that might upset or offend. And that actually prevents us from making mistakes, which prevents us from learning a valuable lesson. So I'm going to give two very important tips here to encourage you to make a mistake and kind of tell you why it's okay. So like I said, we get into this work because we get called to do it. And I want those that get called to do it to understand that compassion that you have, be confident in it. Know that people could feel it. People could sense it. It's magnetic. It's genuine. It's authentic. It comes out. You've seen it. People have told you that they've felt it from you. So be confident in that and know that even if you do make a mistake, you're going to be forgiven. Because there's been times when people have made a mistake about our identities, right? Whether that be wrong age, wrong race, wrong gender, what have you, right? People have made different comments that were incorrect. We typically give grace, right? We are understanding. Same thing applies to you when you make a mistake. So this applies to all the variety of identities. Don't be nervous to connect with somebody because you don't know. Feel free to ask questions. And if you do make a mistake, there's this oops, ouch principle. When a mistake is made, you say something that could be stereotypical or it's incorrect. Like let's say you say somebody, like my mom is from El Salvador, but you say she's from Mexico. You'll typically be corrected. Actually, no, these are my pronouns. I'm from this country. This is the language that I speak. Whatever it is. It's an oops, right? It's like, okay, I learned something. I won't do that again, right? If the apology is genuine, people will be forgiving and you're giving grace. But if you make that mistake again and you repeat the wrong pronoun, the wrong language, the wrong heritage, the wrong race, the wrong age, whatever it is, then it transforms from that safe oops into an ouch because there's a little bit of you should have known better in that. So you're kind of given that one freebie and feel free to use it because that's how you're going to learn. You're going to feel a lot more comfortable connecting with people once you know about them more. And another thing I like to mention too is I give a lot of talks on Latino-ness, Hispanic, and a lot of people are always like, what is the difference between Latino and Hispanic and Latinx? And I don't want to say the wrong thing. And it's like, just don't make it weird, Just be cool, baby, Just don't call us late for dinner. You just don't make it be like, that Latino family, that discomfort that you might present, that's when it becomes harmful. If you present yourself with confidence and just describe a person as they are, that's fine, right? It's when that subtle judgment or any sense of inferiority that exists in that tone, that's where the damage happens. But if you do want to know the breakdown of these two identities, Hispanic applies to those that speak Spanish. So those from Spain are Hispanic. Those that are in Latin America, from Mexico south in the Caribbean, that geographic region is called, there's Latin America. So those are Latinos, right? So we use that term linguistically for Hispanic because Latino is geographic because there's other languages spoken in there, just like the Mayan group that I work with. There's about 400 indigenous languages spoken in Latin America. So Latino applies to identity that goes beyond language because there are even Black, white, brown, Asian, Middle Eastern, Indian, Latinos, right? Culture is about how much time you spend in a place and that growth that happens in that space. Just like American culture is made up of all those variety of races, right? So we have all of these present making up our culture of Americanness. When we think about the term diversity, oftentimes it gets kind of reduced to just this or that, very simple definitions, but it's so much more than that. It is really the broad spectrum of experiences, abilities, racial and cultural differences that make us unique. But it's not just about the differences. It's that collective mixture of the similarities and differences. Because culture is kind of a shared behavior, identity, pattern that people do, right? We could be part of a American culture, like I just talked about. We could be part of a South Carolinian culture, right? Calling shopping carts buggies. We can be part of upstate, Clemson culture with different colors, purples and oranges to wear, or, Gamecock fans like wearing these colors. These things mark us as who we are as different people and what we bring and how we identify and how we connect with one another. So that's how culture works. It's a shared pattern of behavior that creates an identity. So we can belong to multiple cultures all at the same time. Some of them are small, some of them are large. But with those different cultures and identities that we belong to, each one of them brings a sense of wisdom and knowledge through experience by being part of that culture. And that's what diversity is all about. It's about identifying that people are bringing a lot to share. And we need to listen to that because those experiences, that wisdom, can add to the mural that we're painting. If everybody's given a brush, we can paint a lot more beautiful colors and create a mural that includes everybody's input and collective contribution. So this cogs that you see on the screen here, I put these two kind of images here because you see one where all the pulleys and the cogs are interconnected and everything's lining up. You can see that the machine is functioning as it should. But then maybe, we hear, okay, there are other cogs and we need to get a variety of different cogs that exist. It's not representative of all the cogs. So there we go. Get a couple different cogs. But see how they're kind of on the side? They're not exactly integrated. That's kind of this token cog action, right? So what we want to see is that those different cogs contribute to the way that the machine works, right? Once their input and their diversity and who they are and the difference that they bring shapes the way that a machine will function, and it'll add to the strength and it'll give it something new, something fresh, something innovative, and it'll be reflective of what the reality is. That's kind of the point of inclusion with diversity. So there's a couple key terms that are good to go over to understand what this looks like in terms of relationships to one another, the realities that people are experiencing. And this is a lovely cartoon variation of Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree. In the first image, you see the word inequality, and you got the little guy on the left. The tree's kind of already leaning in his direction. Apples are falling on him. Guy on the right, it's not in the right place, right? He's just situated in a place where the apples aren't falling directly on him. It's just not as easy, right? He's not positioned in a place where that kind of benefit is happening to him as easily. So that's just two different outcomes that are different. They're unequal because one is benefiting over the way that the other one is. So then, to try and fix that, the idea of equality has been presented, where it's like, okay, let's increase everybody's ability to access apples. Give everybody a ladder. That's what the second image shows. Both get the same ladder. The little guy on the left still can reach those apples better because the tree is already bending in his direction. So he's filling up his bag. Little guy on the right, empty bag, still can't reach those apples. So that solution that we gave that was the same solution across the board just doesn't make sense because there's different realities for different people, different communities, and we're going to need to come up with solutions that reflect those realities. So that's when equity comes into play. And equity is where you see little guy on the left gets the ladder. He can reach the apples. But little guy on the right, the taller ladder just makes more sense. He needs a little bit taller ladder to be able to reach those apples. The whole point is that we want them both to have apples, right? It's going to take a little bit more ladder for the guy on the right to get them, but it doesn't negatively impact the guy on the left, that the guy on the right is getting a bigger ladder. And what this looks like is outreach, right? Dealing with urban communities, rural communities, how much resources it takes to do connections to your local community. It's going to take a little bit more gas, a little bit more time, a little bit more salary invested into delivering these services to rural communities, rural individuals, or anybody that is a little bit hesitant or reluctant to come access services, right? And that could be due to all sorts of issues. And when I get into the community health worker model, we'll talk about that because these are what we call the social determinants of health. These are the things that impact people's ability to thrive, for their ability to feel comfortable walking into spaces. What are those elements of their identity that changes the way that they interact with reality? So that's when all the pieces related to age, gender, sex, race, identity, those all have their individual situations, which are going to require just different kinds of ladders to be able to reach those apples. And in this case, we're talking about mental health awareness and access. And the last image here is justice, and that's where we see that the tree itself can be changed and modified. With a little bit of tweaking and advocacy and collective effort, we can make that tree not favor one group over the other. So that's where, equal ladders at that point make sense, right? We won't have to give such disparate solutions for each community, each group, because the situation itself will already be a lot more fair. And if I could, I would love to just throw out a mention of Shel Silverstein's book that is my favorite. It's called The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. It's fantastic. It has a mental health component to it about self-actualization, reflection, and connecting with others. And I use it all the time to connect with my kids, and it's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Check it out. So much like what I provided earlier with that storytelling poem and narrative of my own personal experiences in my family, it's important to see these experiences and realities through people's experiences and knowing what it feels like. So here's an example of what barriers may feel like in an interesting way that it's been juxtaposed.
Excuse me, sir. I'm so sorry.
Attendi bien.
Look, she's been crying nonstop. She has a temperature of 105. I don't know what to do.
Marabidig. Vi paroles
No,
lasant.
please. Just every time I feed her, she throws up. I don't know.
Vi paroles
I don't understand what
lasant.
you're saying. What are you saying? Can you just look at her? No, she's burning up. Just feel.
Fire Perolas La Anglan.
What?
Povas my grand and Meslogena.
She's burning up. Feel her head.
Okay, tranquilli, Kananche. The Monday is Ascan.
What is he doing?
Do you have?
My baby, she's got a temperature of 105. Every time I feed her, she throws up. Please, can you?
Teneskila vor temporascula.
She's burning up. Feel her head.
More rapidig.
Please, just feel her head.
Povas comprenia.
Feel her head. Just someone let me in to see the doctor. No, does anyone understand what I'm saying? Please, someone help me.
8% of U.S. citizens speak limited English. For these 25 million Americans, professional interpreters can mean the difference between life and death.
Oftentimes, after that video, people respond strongly. They feel the sense, the urge to want to do something, to help, seeing this woman in the situation where she's desperate, but there's these issues in place where she can't connect and she's frantic. And the humanity in us cries out. And that's what empathy is. That's the feeling of empathy, that we're sensing that there's something that we can do about a situation. But we're only going to know that once we see and understand that this is what somebody's going through. So by observing, connecting, listening, making mistakes, being curious about people's identities, wondering, seeing it as a benefit, as something beautiful that they have to contribute, that there's knowledge and wisdom connected to all these experiences, contribute to our understanding and ability to lift up others, but also to create organizations that include these experiences and voices. And in turn, that will create programs and processes that actually reflect the lived experiences of the communities that we're trying to serve. So when we listen correctly and reflect that back to see if the community itself is benefiting from our changes, that's when we'll see that we are operating on that really reciprocal level. One of the first hurdles that we need to get over is what's called implicit bias. And what that is it's attitudes and stereotypes that impact our understanding, our actions and decisions, but in an unconscious manner. We're doing things without realizing it. So the idea is to make yourself more aware when these situations might emerge and how we can respond to them by reflecting on our own sentiments, the way we feel in certain situations. When we get a little uncomfortable, we need to wonder why and what it is, what decision are we making moving forward from that situation. And I'm going to show you an example of that through another version of storytelling. And this time, there's actually no spoken word at all. This video does a really good job of taking the audience through an experience that is illuminating, surprising, alarming, but familiar. I hear my audience members nodding a lot of times. This is what I go through. I've seen this. I've experienced that. And that's the truth that comes out in these kinds of conversations. If we don't realize that people are going through certain experiences and situations, how are we going to make them better? How are we going to make adjustments to correct where these errors are being made? How can we implement policies and procedures that reflect that change that we need to make sure that these kinds of situations and experiences don't happen? One way that we can assure that we are avoiding these kinds of situations and experiences and creating these encounters of discomfort for others is to listen, is to pay attention to what people are saying they're going through. There's areas of interaction and joking and familiar chat that we might feel is safe, but it's harmful and damaging. This video right here has a playful look at that, but it covers a wide range of different experiences based on what people experience on a day-to-day basis, based on the variety of identities that they have, but also looking at it from an impact standpoint. Like, these have lasting impacts on people's mental health, their sense of worth, and all these things compound, which leads to needing those different ladders to connect with them. So take a look at this video and get a good sense of just how commonplace and how often you might hear these things yourself.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins name. It's part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? Give me shopping advice right
I
now.
love Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every goddamn day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty. Can
Can I
touch
touch
your
it,
hair,
please?
Can I please?
is fucking annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares?
Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try less challenging, Major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
One of the ways that we can prevent these situations from happening comes from Jackson Katz, who has a really great TED Talk, and he talks about being a bystander. It's the bystander approach. And he's using it in terms of men advocating for violence against women. But this applies in all situations because the damage is done. If people are being treated unfairly, if people are experiencing some kind of discrimination, it's up to us to say something, to stop that behavior, to prove that it's not okay for that to continue. Then that behavior will begin to become less common. But it's gonna take collective action on behalf of all our parts to stand up for each other, right? We need to look out and protect one another because there's gonna be times when we need that, when we appreciate having an advocate. And we're going to talk about allies and advocates in a minute here and what that looks like and what it sounds like. But here's a video that really breaks down how we can see these situations within a professional setting, a personal setting, and what actions we can take that make sense, that we can apply daily, structurally, and hopefully some of these make sense for you in your workplace as well.
Let's start looking at some specific ways you can show up as an ally in your workplace. As you think about the actions you might take, it's helpful to keep your privilege and positional power in mind. When you recognize your privilege, you can better see the barriers that people with less privilege face and address them as you take action. And when you reflect on your positional power, you'll begin to see where you are best positioned to drive change. Your positional power is based on your role and level. We all have positional power. In fact, we often have more than we realize. So, how can you start taking action? It's helpful to think about allyship actions in 3 categories: individual, interpersonal, and structural. Individual actions are the steps you take to educate yourself, model good behavior, or change your mindset. There are many different types of individual actions. They often happen behind the scenes, but they're still really important. For example, learning about others' experiences is an individual action, and it's also a critical step towards showing up as an ally with empathy and understanding. You can also take individual actions to make your work more inclusive. This might look like using gender-neutral language in written materials, or making sure people of all races and abilities are represented in imagery. Again, these are just a few of many possible individual actions. You'll have a chance to explore others in the next part of this workshop.
Interpersonal actions involve supporting others and advocating for equity in your day-to-day interactions. Speak up when you notice inequity, for example, by correcting a colleague who assumes a new hire is straight or cisgender is an interpersonal action. So is mentoring a colleague with a traditionally marginalized identity or making sure they get credit for their accomplishments and ideas. Affirming someone's experience of inequity can also be a powerful interpersonal action. For example, letting a colleague know you're thinking of them when violence or hatred against their community is in the news. As you practice interpersonal allyship actions, remember that no 2 people or situations are the same. People with similar identities can have very different experiences, needs, and expectations. It's always important to think about the individual you're supporting, the relationship you have with them, and the specific barriers they're facing.
Finally, structural actions involve pushing for more equitable norms, policies, and systems. For example, advocating for objective criteria in hiring and promotions is a structural action. Another example is encouraging your company to use software and other tools that are accessible to people with disabilities. Before you push for structural change, take some time to learn about the solutions that people with traditionally marginalized identities are already working on. Then be intentional about aligning your work with theirs. Whether your actions are individual, interpersonal, or structural, remember that allyship is an ongoing practice. There's no finish line because there is always more we can do to promote equity.
One of the things that we cultural anthropologists really like to do is to complicate notions that exist, right? Question them and see their validity and the strength behind them. And we like to analyze things like race versus ethnicity. So what is the difference? What is the difference between race and ethnicity? Race is a social construct, which means it's something that we've all agreed upon, that we decided as a society, but it's based on our physical markers. It's the way that our genes express themselves, the phenotype of our genes. And that leads to skin color, hair texture, eye color, eye shape, nose shape, ear shape, arm length, all these varieties of what our bodies express themselves as. And then we create groups of similar body types, body features, and we've created these categories that we call races. What's interesting, though, is that racial categories only reflect who's present in your society. So other communities, other cultures, other countries around the world have different racial categories. In Guatemala, like I've talked about before, there's 21 indigenous languages spoken there. So they have a wide range of blending throughout the years based on the movement of people coming from Europe and settling in that part of the world. So they have different categories based on different skin tones. In Brazil, they have different determinations based on your lip shape. Things that we don't see as important are important in other places. The reason I bring this up is because we see race as this like very concrete thing to define each other and what groups we belong to. And it matters, it does, because there is an impact to the way that we perceive one another based on these racial categories, right? It leads to ways that we think about people's behaviors, their abilities. We tag different ways of thinking based on these unknown categories that we may not have connections with. That's where that getting comfortable with being uncomfortable plays out. Because if we don't know, we might rely on this larger narrative, trope, stereotype to let us think a certain way. And we need to question that. What is it that makes us feel this way? What's making us think this thought? Is it because I saw this about this person and it makes me think because these people are like this? This is how race plays into that. And it has big impacts. It has big impacts on education, on health, all the elements of people interacting with each other. We see each other. And when we talk about, I don't see color, well, let's talk about that in a little bit. Ethnicity is another concept. Ethnicity relates to cultural background. That's like the rhythm and the flair of where you come from. And Latino-ness is really the first in this awakening to realize that that's a separate concept, right? It confuses people, but ethnicity and race are separate because Latinos, like I mentioned earlier, can be white, black, brown, right? Which is those bodies, right? If one racial group can't be applied to Latino-ness, it's a rhythm. It's a way of being. It's a way of, the distance that you connect with, so how close you whisper, how you hug, the amount of time you spend with your neighbors and your community. All of these things are culture, right? So we are kind of the American ethnicity, right? And then you can even see it, like I said before, there's South Carolina. It's an ethnicity, right? It's a culture. It's a sense of being. It's a way that we are that transcends racial categories. So ethnicity is an expression of your identity. Race is just the expression of your body. And these are ways that we can connect with each other, but they also have different impacts when it comes to the way that we're perceiving each other. So I'm just recommending approach these concepts with curiosity, with wonder, with dignity, with seeing these differences as something exciting, something great to learn about, something new, and being okay with not knowing. Because that's the difference between cultural competency and cultural humility. Cultural competency is kind of that ability to navigate and connect with other people and interact with people that are different from you, understanding them. So just being kind of comfortable in that space, that's kind of being competent, right? So just being able to swim in other waters. Cultural humility adds on, how do we get there? It's by admitting that we don't know. It's knowing that there's so much to learn and being humble in that sense of teach me, right? A lot of this comes from the work of popular education, where we see a classroom as opportunities for the students to teach the class and the teacher and shape the way that we learn together. We're all teachers as well as students. So in addition to the concept of race and ethnicity, what's nationality? Oftentimes this term gets used interchangeably with these other ones, and it gets a little confusing. But here's a good way to kind of see it in a clear way. Nationality applies to what country do you belong to? Like as if you had a passport, what country would that passport be from, right? American passport. American is your nationality. right? You could be from somewhere else, but if you live here now, you're American. If you're a citizen here, you're American. If you have a passport from another country, I'm from Peru. I have a Peruvian passport, like Paddington. Chinese passport, you get it. So it's different countries, their nationalities is where is your passport from? What I'd like to share here is what's called the continuum of cultural competency. And what it is the process by which people might slowly become more and more comfortable with different groups and finding ways to incorporate that into the workplace, into our systems, our institutions, the way that we make decisions, our programs that we design. So we got to kind of see the process starting at the beginning of where we're very misunderstanding. We don't know. There's a lot of fear involved. That's where we see this destructiveness, right? So there's kind of this forced assimilation to become like everyone else, where that difference is not seen as anything good or beneficial. And really, there's only one group that has the control over what gets done, and that's the red zone there. That red is bad, right? Moving forward, we get into the orange. And this is racism, right? Stereotypes, the way that we see other people. And that leads to unfair behaviors, decisions, hiring practices, right? Next, we get into what we call cultural blindness, the yellow here. And it's saying that don't talk about the differences. If we don't talk about those differences, all this will go away. Don't mention it. I don't see color. Treat everybody the same. But do we not see color? Is that the best we can do? This is what I like to say where all lives matter lives. Because it's kind of ignoring that reality of people expressing themselves, saying that, look, there's something happening. My unique experience matters. Please pay attention to it. Something needs to be done. Because of my difference, I'm being treated different. There's a different outcome. And just ignoring it and pretending like it doesn't exist, that we don't see it, is silencing. It's making it as if it doesn't matter. And I think we could do a little bit better than that. We could take it to the next step where we do listen and we make efforts and changes. And with that, we'll see that there's benefits that come along with that. Getting into the green here, cultural pre-competence. So that's when you start thinking, okay, I'm interested. Tell me more. I want to know what's going on with you and your community. What are your experiences? I'm going to start seeing how your experiences are reflected through our programs and how we are connecting with you as a community. So I'm listening, right? You're open now. You're open to hearing that unique experience based on your unique identity, unique community. When I was part of the census, we had different groups that we were all being, captains to reach out to. Obviously, I was one of the Latino leads, but each category of different segments of our society had like a force, right? Like, let's get out there and connect with this community. Let's find representatives, connect, get a pulse on the community, and let's see what we can do to do better at bringing their recruitment and voice forward. The next is the blue, cultural competence. So this is when you start seeing that those unique differences do exist, and you're taking it even further than just being curious and seeking out those experiences. You want to hear how changes can be made. So you're looking for advice. You're letting the narrative be driven by the community itself. You want your programs to reflect the needs of the community. If you don't know exactly what they're going through, if you don't know their rhythm of what time bus routes go through their neighborhood, you're not going to know that working around that schedule isn't going to make sense. Yes or no? And that's take you to the next level. You're hiring staff that reflect the community that you work with. You are hiring staff that are unbiased. You're doing measures to check to see how people feel about difference. You ask questions in the interview process that bring out people's sense of value, of others, respect, dignity. You're making sure that you reflect those values in your workplace, in your policies, in your programs. And by bringing in these diverse voices, you're going to make sure that you're going to have enough bystanders to stand up for each other. The last one is that cultural proficiency. That's when you're really going strong, everything's working well. There's like this feedback loop of whatever changes you make, it's because this particular segment of society said, hey, maybe you should try this. And a modification was made. And then the community itself returns and reciprocates and says, yes, that made sense to us. And that's by getting everybody involved in the process. And that means the design of research, projects, programs, having advisory councils made up of community members based on whatever these segments of society are, having these conversations and listening to that. So hearing the impact of the changes of your efforts and knowing what the community itself is experiencing from these programs, from these efforts, and making sure that they know that they're being heard, right? We talk about voiceless, people who are voiceless. Well, nobody's voiceless, but some people's voices are not as loud. And sometimes it's our role to amplify and bring those voices with us to areas where decisions are being made. If we can't put them at the table, we want to bring the voice with us to our tables. And the problem here is that maybe after one of my trainings, you're in the Purple for Latino communities, right? Boom, you guys are just nailing it for Latinos after my training, good job. But you might not be there for other communities. Discrimination, prejudice, it exists on this interesting spectrum where you can be prejudiced more so for one group or another. So maybe purple for the Latinos, but for the LGBTQIA plus community, you might be in the orange or yellow, or for the deaf community, or for African-American community, what have you. It takes that reflection to make sure that we're moving ourselves along this continuum to improve our ability to connect, reflect, and lift up communities from all these different areas of our society. This plays into one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is given by Desmond Tutu. He says, "If you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." And what he's saying is that your inaction has consequences. You're not innocent by not getting involved. By not getting involved, in essence, you're allowing, giving permission, not resisting. You are condoning in a way. So you are not being neutral in a situation of injustice. You are actively participating and allowing and contributing to the current situation that is happening. So it's up to us to make sure that we take that bystander approach and do something, say something, get involved. Every little action multiplied by 100,000 times makes a big difference. And seeing what these experiences look like comes in a variety of situations, and Netflix gave a great video showing their storytelling, how impactful it is by interviewing their workforce and seeing the variety and diversity and all the various experiences that are reflected in their workforce in this video.
Hello.
What's going down?
Oi.
Hi.
Marhaba, ana Nof.
Konnichiwa. This is about you.
This is about us.
I'm a father of 4 amazing kids.
A dancer, but only in my bedroom.
A believer in the power of stories.
Soy bilingüe, casi trilingüe.
Sou lésbica. Eu sou amiga.
Japanese, Korean.
Palestinian, a German national.
An immigrant, East Asian American woman of color.
And a Zamiltak.
あなたも私の同僚です。
We make amazing things together.
We aspire to bring joy
to the entire world.
But
you and I inhabit different worlds.
You and I have access to different spaces.
Unless you've experienced it, you can never fully understand what it's like to be stuck between 2 cultures.
To pretend to be someone else in order to be safe.
To grow up in South America in Spanish, and at 19 having to relocate to the US and live in English.
To be a Black gay man from the rural South.
And be the only one in the room.
Unless you've experienced it yourself, you can never really know what it's like.
To have to listen to someone be degrading to your race and be the only person of that race in the room.
To not know whether you can call the country that you love home.
To be the father of a trans daughter.
I think we all have a responsibility to make the world that we live in a little bit better. And you kind of have to start where you are.
What allyship is listening, compassion.
To immerse yourself in content and experiences and stories from groups that aren't of your own.
Anybody who sees something that isn't quite right can become an ally and help their colleagues.
When you've been through a struggle that hurt you for such a long time, I think you have this endless energy to give to others.
Anyone can be an ally, and everyone can use an ally, and you can use your privilege in the moment to extend that privilege to someone else.
I think this is what makes us human, to help others and to be empathetic.
We're all learning.
We're all learning.
E tá todo mundo aprendendo.
Mabad.
Juntos.
There's one company.
We can all be allies.
We can all be allies.
So here's a few strategies that you can take. One, there's all sorts of resources out there. Books, right? Reading books by authors whose backgrounds are different than your own. You're gonna get an entire new perspective on somebody's lived experience because they're gonna tell you about it in long form. This particular book is called Raising White Kids. It was written by a lesbian couple. So here you go. You get the perspective of a queer woman who is white, raising white kids, talking about being white. And what the entire thesis behind her book is saying is that if we don't talk about these things with our kids, society's gonna tell them about it anyways. They're just gonna assume that the way the world is the natural way things should be. So mentioning our different experiences, our different identities, how they play out in society, and wondering why is important. Because if we don't have those conversations, they're gonna learn it anyways, and they're gonna be basing it on, based on existing stereotypes and other societal norms. Okay, so I get it. Books are long, they can be boring. How about movies? There's all sorts of movies available. There's documentaries. You go on Netflix itself, there's, Latino stories, queer stories, Black stories. They have them segmented. So you can go explore different experiences, different communities, different cultures, different backgrounds. And then there's the ones that really take you through historical experiences like Just Mercy, The Help, that give you that perspective and that experience of what it was like in certain time periods in different communities, what it felt like to be discriminated against. And this really gives you a new perspective, or at least expands your perspective to see more than what you might have already known. But okay, I get it. Sometimes those movies are heavy, right? It's like that feeling of being kind of gut punch. You don't always want to sit with that after a documentary or a heavy movie. Okay, well, culture, people are wanting you to get to know their culture everywhere. Poetry, museums, music, food, right? These are ways to step into other people's realities, and they're showing you, they're proud of their culture. It's ways for you to connect on different ways that they're expressing themselves. With that, you visit these different areas, connect with this concept, this piece of who that community is, that culture is, and you're gonna feel a little bit more comfortable asking somebody a question. Hey, I saw this at this one event. What do you know about that? Or this was new. I had no idea. And admitting that, it brings a whole nother sense of humility as well. But it's really important to note the progress that we've made to where we are currently. And another thing to keep in mind is being aware of the discriminations that have existed in our history throughout time, the way that those have shaped our current reality. And a couple of these examples I like to give in my trainings is the Bracero program is one, which involved our relationship between Mexico and the United States during World War II. We needed a lot of workforce help because a lot of our men were off fighting in the wars. That's when women entered the workforce. But we also invited Mexican nationals to come and work in our factories. And that really helped bring the economy back. But we had a system where braceros would come and go, and they would freely walk into our country and return the same day or a week. And this was before any of our formalized immigration policies were in place. Well, there was a mutually beneficial situation happening. But as our war was calming down, we wanted these jobs to go back to American citizens. So immigration started becoming a little bit more ratchet and difficult and, taking steps to make it not as free-flowing. But the history, that mutual benefit, is important to know that there's that contribution to our success that was based on this movement of people throughout time. The New Deal was a policy that came out during the same time. And what that was a big investment in government jobs to help build our infrastructure, building roads and bridges and all sorts of things that boosted not only our ability to produce, but also our economy as a society. There was this big influx of incomes for communities and families. But the thing that we don't always talk about is that these kinds of programs, we got to think about the historical context here. This was in the 1930s. This was before civil rights, before Jim Crow. Only certain people were offered these positions. When we talk about the New Deal, we oftentimes say that it created the American middle class. But like I said, who had access to these positions? Who was elevated to create a middle class? Only a certain segment of our population. I mean, women had just gotten the right to vote. A lot was going on at this time. A lot of people were excluded, and it was legal to do that. Speaking about legality, the GI Bill, which also came out during this time, gave a little bit of an advantage to military personnel coming back after their service to access things like home ownership. And because of race, these home ownerships weren't evenly distributed. And this went on until the 80s and 90s. It was legal to discriminate against selling houses to people of color until the 80s and 90s, well past civil rights. So these bills, these policies that seem great in terms of lifting up society, it seems like that ladder that we're just giving everybody doesn't always reach everyone. That's when we need to understand the lived experiences of the different communities, because what might be legal might be unfair, and we need to question these things. And sometimes we forget about our histories. Like during all of my work in this field, it was kind of surprising to me to find out that Black women only got the right to vote in 1965. We talk about the suffragettes of the 1920s and, getting the right to vote, but that wasn't all women that got that right to vote. It took 1965 for Black women and Latino women to get the right to vote. This isn't that long ago, right? So I like to end my presentations with talking about what change makers can be, what they can look like. And Paulo Freire here said it, I think, the best. He says, a change maker is marked by their ability to trust others, to believe in the capacity of others, to think, dream, create, build, to know, and to act. So that's knowing that the communities themselves know the solutions to their own issues. It's our job to listen, to believe them, and use our platforms to lift and create the realities that they know they deserve and what it takes to get there. But it's going to take that collaboration. Gloria Steinem says, whenever one person stands up and says, wait a minute, this is wrong, it helps other people do the same. One of the funny things about culture and identity is that we can sometimes think that, we're better than others, that we're the best, right? I mean, America #1 and all that kind of stuff. But I saw a billboard on the way up here into the Greenville area, and it says, GSP, North America's best airport, voted by our passengers, right? It's like, Okay, of course it's the best airport according to us. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of that's. I mean, no, it's not. It's not. You know, the one in Washington D.C. or the one in Canada, or no, definitely Greenville and Spartanburg's airport is the best in North America. That's just a funny way to think about ourselves as really thinking that we're the best. It's my favorite billboard on my commute here. And one of the workforces that I champion, because I'm a part of it, is the community health worker workforce, which I think really does a good job of incorporating these elements of listening to community, reflecting community, and bringing forth those experiences. Because the definition of what a community health worker is by the American Public Health Association is an individual who comes from the community they serve or has an unusually close relationship with it. So because of that shared identity, you have that extra ability to reach in and connect, because you know what it was like, right? I work with Latino community health workers. They know what it was like to be lost looking for a library or a bank or a clinic, right? That immigrant experience. So having that connection just makes sense. I'm the president of the Men's National Community Health Worker Alliance. What we're trying to do is get men to talk about their health, mental health, things that we don't like to mention, right? But if we have men being vulnerable, being the example, connecting with other men, it's gonna be a lot easier. It's gonna make a lot more sense because they're seeing somebody that looks like them, that's speaking their language, that they see themselves in you. So finding people that represent the community themselves will be a nice bridge and a way to lift up others. So reflecting community themselves, sharing that identity is very important, very valuable. I think like connecting it to like The Missing Piece Meets the Big O, right? Like honestly, like if you guys get a chance, read that book. It takes 5 minutes to read through it. And like there's a Spanish version and that's how I'm trying to teach my kids Spanish is with that book. It's just like knowing that we can make a difference, that we matter, right? Like I'll give you an example. This is a kind of a sad story, but I turned it into something beautiful. I lost my first child, right? Her name is Orchid. And I named her that because when I was in Mexico volunteering for a little while, there's a orchid reserve and fell in love with orchids. And it's like, I'm gonna name my kid Orchid. But yeah, 40 weeks. And we're excited about Orchid, and her heart couldn't take it and she came out asleep, right? So, thought of ways to make it matter and change the narrative and create something beautiful out of something painful. I got a tattoo, Orchid tattoo. But I didn't want that day to always be something that triggered pain every time it came up. So I thought about things, and I saw like national days, right? Sibling Day was just kind of getting started, and I was like, is that new, right? How do you create a day? Is there an Orchid Day? And there wasn't. So I looked into it, got the whole process figured out, and I created National Orchid Day, right? So April 16th is National Orchid Day, and it's cool because, it's beyond my control. Like, Disney and National Gardens and, orchid societies everywhere now celebrate it, which is awesome. And so, I see this beautiful thing as now her story. You'll find it if you Google it, you'll find her story and my story and everything like that. But, I created this moment to honor and celebrate this flower and the beauty of it all. And yeah, sure. But in essence, she's immortal, right? So she never took a breath of actual air, but she is immortal. And, like growing up, I always thought like the names like George Washington and, you're these people that are Genghis Khan, like they've made this impact on Earth that is forever, right? And you don't size yourself up to these huge legends, right? Like, I'm never gonna make something that matters. And I just like sharing that, like, it's possible. Like, I know I changed Like I changed culture, right? I'm forever, you know what I mean? I did it, but for whatever reason, sad story related, but like the power that I just like to emphasize that people to not forget the impact that they do have, right? Like the power that they have to change things. For others, I've gotten messages from people like, hey, especially even like men talking about loss. That's a big one, men opening up about, I just had a friend lose a baby recently. But that connection, right? So it's like, that's what I love. I love the connection that people can make, right? And finding ways to help people make those connections, but also just seeing how much it matters and how much they matter and how much it could create something that just is bigger than you can even imagine, right? And that it's possible. You can turn something painful into something beautiful, and you can turn something small into something huge. And it's gonna take standing out to do it.
Thank you again for your commitment to this critical work. We hope you continue your journey with us to expand peer support throughout the state.